Welcome in to a special short form edition of Necessary Roughness brought to you by Bite Size Sports. I'm your host, John Boyd. If you follow the channel, you know that we had to postpone the Tuesday night live show. I was down with a sickness, but I'm back off IR, and we've rescheduled that now to Thursday night at 9 p.m. Central Time. And if you're new here, if you like what you see on this breakdown, you'll love our weekly live shows as well that usually take place Tuesdays at 9/8 Central. We're going to be breaking down this Vikings-Packers border battle matchup that'll take place this Sunday at noon Central. And it's a very interesting game to preview because now there's starting to be some things circulating that say Jordan Love may play. He's said that he's willing to play at less than 100%. So if that's the case, the offense it might not look drastically different if LaFleur is going in there saying, "Hey, we're not going to have Jordan Love at full go, kind of slinging it back to business as usual." But if it's Malik Willis, we'll see something similar to what we've seen over the last 2 weeks, and the numbers by which we'll break down this preview will be more reflective of the Malik Willis-led Packers offenses. That's about 2/3 of the data we have to this point. Personally, as I really love to, I really love to watch Love play, and so I hope he doesn't go out there at less than 100% against the defense that leads the league in sacks, and maybe they can just ride this into, even if not the bye, maybe just into next week. Give him a little bit more time. You'd hate to see him re-injure that knee that he injured in week 1 down in Brazil. Those things can be really touchy. And, if that's something that he re-injures, could have an even bigger effect then on the rest of this Packers season. So a lot of these numbers, again, we'll be looking at through the lens of largely a Malik Willis-led offense. But these things could change a little bit if we do see Jordan Love out there. So we're going to start with this Vikes defense against the Packers offense. Brian Flores, Matt LaFleur should be a really fun chess match, regardless of who's under center for the Packers. And what's interesting about the Packers offense to this point is what LaFleur has been able to do to adapt to that Jordan Love injury. In week 2, it was very staunch. He was running the ball at an insane rate. Malik Willis threw 14 total passes in a big win. They were running a ton of jet motion. They were getting Bo Melton involved, Jaden Reed, Josh Jacobs, of course, but Malik Willis as well on some design plays. So it's been a very dynamic run offense to this point in the season. And that's going to go up against the Vikings rush defense that has been one of the best in the league to this point. Obviously, they didn't have to see Christian McCaffrey in that Niners matchup, but Jordan Mason is no slouch, and the way Kyle Shanahan designs a run game is still formidable. Against the Giants, it's not Saquon anymore. It was Devin Singletary, who, for what it's worth, ripped off a huge run to kind of seal the game against Cleveland this past week. So they've got something in the tank. There's definitely something to be said for this Vikings defensive front and the job they've done to this point. The Packers to this point are passing the ball less than 40% of the time. The highest rush rate in the league, just 39.7% pass rate, over 60%. They're rushing the ball. And they've been second in rush yards per play, but only 20th in success rate. And success rate is essentially based on the down and distance. On first and second down, do you get half or more of the yards required to get the first down? And if it's third down or fourth down, do you get the first down or not? So they've been 20th in success rate running the football, but second in rush yards per play. A lot of that has to do with them being tied for first with a very potent Baltimore rushing offense with 19 10-plus yard runs, some explosive plays through the ground game that have really buoyed this, again, Malik Willis-led offense. And a lot of that credit goes to Matt LaFleur. A lot of that credit goes to this offensive line, which seems to always be one of the best units in the league. A lot of that has to do with the way they draft, the depth they acquire, and these guys they're able to find in late rounds to that become solid starters. And that's something that's annoyed me since I can remember, but I've gained a more of an appreciation for it as I've gotten older and began covering the league. What's interesting about this matchup, again, is Packers second in rush yards per play. Vikings are third in rush yards allowed per play. The Vikings are also, Vikings are also second in stuff rate. So, how often they stop runs for a short, no gain, or a loss. And they've been extremely effective at sort of spilling, is what they call spilling runs to the outside. Over 60% of rush plays have gone outside the tackles against this Vikings defense. And that plays right into the hands of Brian Flores with all of this lateral speed that exists at the second level of this defense, whether it's Ivan Pace, Blake Cashman, Josh Metellus, Harrison Smith sniffing around the line of scrimmage often as well. And really all these defensive backs have been really, really sure tacklers. And that's going to play into the pass game as well, because this Packers offense is sixth in yards after catch over expected. A lot of dynamic playmakers that they can use with Jaden Reed, Bo Melton, Josh Jacobs out of the backfield at times. Both of these tight ends have been pretty effective. So that's going to really challenge a Vikings group that's 28th in the league in average target separation at the catch. But again, only 7th in pass yards per play, and 8th in EPA per pass allowed. That means these defensive backs are rallying and tackling effectively and efficiently to snuff out throws to oftentimes the flat, which is where Flores wants to funnel as many of these throws as he can with pressure and sort of muddying the reads over the middle and deep down the field, enough to force quarterbacks to check down and, again, play into the hands of this really good tackling group at the second and third levels of the defense. This Vikings defense, again, against the pass, they've been doing a great job of disguising what they're doing on the back end, both with pre-snap and post-snap motion, as well as manipulating the protection rules of the offensive line, generating one-on-ones without having to send this inordinate amount of pressure that they did last season. Last season led the league in 6 or more man pressures, but also led the league in drop 8 percentage. This year, it's a lot more 5-man fire zones underneath either a quarters, kind of 4 deep, 2 under, or a cover 2 look with 2 deep, 4 under. And where the pressure is coming from is something that's very difficult to read, especially for younger quarterbacks. And Jordan Love has a lot of time in the NFL, but not a ton of experience as a starter. Same with Malik Willis. So it'll really test both of those guys, both of their acumen in reading a defense, trusting what they see, which is difficult to do against the Brian Flores defense, to be effective in this game. Flipping it over to the other side, this Vikings offense against the new Jeff Hafley Packers defense. Now, we talked about the pass run rate of the Packers. For Kevin O'Connell, this is the most balanced attack he has driven since he got to the Vikings. Over a 66% pass rate in 2023, something like 63% pass rate in 2022. And rush yards over expected was close to last in the league, even with Dalvin Cook taking most of those carries in 2022. And of course, was largely abysmal with Alexander Mattison as the number 1 running back and a younger Ty Chandler who's been very effective this season as well, behind Aaron Jones. And Aaron Jones has been a big difference maker in that regard. They're running it now over 47% of the time, much healthier run-pass split, especially within the context of today's NFL. And while, it's been an effective pass game, it's still something that hasn't really had to prove itself in a lot of situations that we're likely to see down the stretch into the playoffs. The Vikings have been playing from in front for a lot of this season. Jumped down the Giants' throats immediately in week 1. Got an early lead against San Francisco, 14-0 at half against Houston. And they've really just had to manage things from a passing perspective. And Sam Darnold, when asked to, I mean, there was a drive up 6 against the Niners that he took 8 or 9 minutes to go. Took him all the way downfield and lined up a field goal, made a couple really good throws on that drive. A lot of people will point to the Naylor seam ball that he back shoulders and just sits him down with. Really big time throw to set up a field goal that made it a 2-score game, and almost impossible for the Niners to come back. What's interesting about this Vikings pass game is, as strong as the protection has been, it's been an interesting thing to see the amount of time they've had to get to these deeper concepts, and for Sam Darnold to process things. This offense is 29th in time to throw. So he's sitting in the pocket. Darnold has done some things off script to get outside of the pocket. That touchdown to Justin Jefferson to start the game off against Houston in week 3. And they're also 28th in pressure rate. 40% of the time, Sam Darnold's under pressure over the course of this season. But they're only being blitzed at the 28th highest rate. Less than 20% of the time is the blitz coming against Sam Darnold and the Vikings O-line. So while you'd think maybe Hafley really dials it up, the Packers are blitzing at the 5th lowest rate in the NFL through 3 games, playing coverage, as they might say on a broadcast, but only sending 4 more often than not. And like I said, they've been a stronger unit to this point in the season. The Packers are allowing the 4th longest time to throw in the league. So unless something changes from Hafley's game plan, you're probably going to see Darnold with a lot of time to process things, a lot of time to go through his reads in the pocket again in week 4. Now, that could bode well for this Vikings offense, but it can also give him a little extra time to potentially force things, potentially make a mistake. The mistakes he's made to this point in the season really haven't come back to hurt the Vikings. Strip sack that rolls into Brandon Powell's hands and turns into a gain of 8. The only one that really bit them was that Fred Warner interception. Forced a wheel route to, I think it was either Johnny Munn or Josh Oliver up the right hash into double coverage that was batted down. There's been some things, a little bit of old Sam Darnold creeping into the way he's played. But again, he's been really effective when he needs to be. And it's helped to have such a strong rushing game with Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, and this Vikings offensive line led by Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill, one of the better tackle duos in the NFL. They've been 8th in rushing success rate through 3 games, 8th in rush yards per play over expected, and they will run versus stacked boxes. The Packers are much different. The Packers have only run the ball something like 13% of the time against stacked boxes. LaFleur is going to spread you out. They're going to do the jet motion stuff. They're going to attack nickel and dime with the run. The Vikings, on the other hand, the way they've been executing these duo run calls has been effective against nickel. It's been effective against base. Houston came out in base against the Vikings 21 personnel in week 3 to finally say, okay, nickel's not working against 12 and 21. They came out in base, and that was the Aaron Jones 39-yarder down to the 1. That was a big time play to really, really put it away in that week 3 matchup. Now, this Packers run defense, they've been no slouches either. They're 7th in stuff rate. They're 10th in EPA per rush allowed. So it's going to be a really cool matchup to see. And as well as this tackle duo of the Vikings has played in pass protection, did a really, really good job against Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter, who are first and second in the league in pressures, respectively, in total pressures. A lot of that pressure has come up the middle. The 40% pressure rate probably has a lot to do with Dexter Lawrence's 58% pressure rate in week 1, attacking Bradbury and Ingram, the center and right guard. So do we see a big game out of Kenny Clark pushing the pocket? As much as I like that edge rotation, it's something that sort of cancels out between Darrisaw and O'Neal going against Gary, Smith, and Van Ness. So that'll be one of the big cruxes of how this game plays out. How much pressure can the Packers generate up the middle? And are they going to blitz a little bit more? Are they going to blitz more than 15% of the time, especially going against the team who leads the league in blitz rate? Now, the big heavy hitter this game is going to be how the Packers secondary is able to contend with Justin Jefferson and the emerging Jalen Nailor in coverage. Again, they're allowing the 5th most time to throw in the league. The Vikings are having the 5th longest time to throw in the league. So one of those things has to budge. Are they going to cover long enough to get home with more often than not 4? Or are the Vikings going to be able to take advantage of, and Kevin O'Connell's been great at this, taking advantage of the matchups they want for Justin Jefferson? Even when the Texans tried to have Stingley on him, they ran a lot of man coverage with Stingley on him. You motion Jefferson over to where you want him to be, run that long crosser. Nobody's really going to be able to keep up with them in man. They did this to the Packers a ton last season and the season prior, just getting Jair Alexander in conflict. And what Joe Barry's defense did to counter that when Jefferson had a down game was just bracket safety coverage with Jair able to confidently press Justin Jefferson, knowing he had safety help over the top, and sort of being able to take away the other weapons of that offense. So a very good run defense for the Packers going up against a very strong rushing game for the Vikings. A very strong rushing defense for the Vikings going up against a very strong running game of the Packers. Do we see Willis or Love? How much does that change the DNA of the game plan, given that Love might not be at 100%? These are things I'm really looking to see on Sunday. Obviously, it's Skull Vikes. Obviously, we don't want Jordan Love to get re-injured. But if he plays, it'll be a big-time litmus test for both how well he's recovered to this point and where he's at as a processor in general against one of the trickiest defenses in the National Football League, if not the trickiest. And I'm looking forward to it. Skull Vikes, tune back in Thursday night at about 9:15 Central, right after Supersize Sports, to catch Necessary Roughness, where we're going to preview the rest of the slate for Week 4.